Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. It's time for our weekly segment with Sam Bradshaw of Sikkim365.com.
We continue this 5 o'clock hour. Paul's top 5 in 30 minutes. Paul, Sam Bradshaw momentarily, or do we have him ready to go?
Right now.
Sam Bradshaw, S11, and soon to be delivering a baby in the next few weeks. So we take advantage of all of the opportunities we can. He has broken down KU and Baylor offense, defense, and depth charts and all that, much more. Sam, thanks for your time. I read all of the updates and whatever. Who is Kansas right now? Let's look at the offensive side of the ball. They like the quarterback. He can make you, hurt you with his legs. Who is Kansas right now on offense?
Thanks for having me on. And Kansas is a team on offense that they've got a few parts that are pretty good, but they're just not a full roster yet. The guy that's getting all the headlines right now is North Texas transfer Jason Bean, who athletically is like a receiver at quarterback. I think he's 6'2", 6'3", but he's like 190 pounds. But he can really fly. I think in high school he ran something like a 10.5 or 10.3 100 meters. Even if that time's a little inflated, that's booking it. Nick can pull away from people. He is the biggest weapon you've got to deal with on their offense. And they've got a good running back in Belton Gardner. And they've got some decent receivers. But a lot of what they're doing is they're having to rebuild their offensive line. They lost 3 guys off of a struggling unit from last year. And while they got a Buffalo transfer at center and a Notre Dame transfer at guard and another Buffalo transfer that's kind of at guard or tackle, it's really a work in progress for them up front. New coach Lance Leipold, he won 6 national titles at the Division III level. Then he turned Buffalo around, literally came into Buffalo the year after Baylor beat them back-to-back years and dropped like 130 points on them in 2 games. And he turned them into a 2-time division winner in the MAC. It's very much a similar wide zone scheme to what Baylor is installing. So they're really trying to get things under control. Offensively, with that line being work in progress and with that quarterback, they're not really able to protect them all that consistently. It's really boom or bust for them. They were able to hit some big plays against Coastal Carolina, but South Dakota was a lot more disciplined on defense against them, and they had under 20 yards of drive against FCS teams. So it's boom or bust. If you can just keep them from hitting the big plays, you can usually get them to self-destruct somewhere on the drive.
Sam, what concerns you the most about their offense? Would it just be the mobility of the quarterback and the fact that Baylor got burned by that early in the season a little bit?
A little bit. The quarterback himself taking off for long runs is clearly the biggest home run threats they have right now. He and Belton Gardner at running back. Gardner is not the speedster Puka Williams was, but he's probably a little tougher to take down on contact. Those are the guys you worry about breaking the big play for them. And as far as quarterbacks getting loose, Brady McBride did a good job of buying time and eluding, but I feel like McBride does a better job of buying time to make plays downfield. And while Bean did a good job of it on a few plays against Coastal Carolina, I'm not sure that Texas State doesn't have better protection than Kansas does right now.
So we got to see a little bit more of Gary Bohannon last week. Obviously the opponent was not a great barometer, but we at least got some more looks at this offense and what they're doing. And Sam, what were your thoughts on another showing from Gary and another showing of this Jeff Grimes offense, Eric Mateos offensive line, so forth?
Well, I thought that was a good example of what you needed to do against a team like that. Nobody's going to walk in saying Texas Southern is strong competition for you. Nobody's even going to go into the SWAC and say that when you're talking about a team that's lost 19, 20 straight. However, you looked at some of the games last year, even against teams like Kansas, the line was never really in sync. There was always something going on. And, the West Virginia game last year, you're running power and 2 guys run right by a guy that they're supposed to block. And Charlie Brewer had 2 guys sitting there, the guy he's supposed to read and the guy they were supposed to block, ready to take him down. Just handling your own business and being efficient in the way that you're getting the line to execute That's the biggest takeaway for me. And seeing Bohannon execute well when he has time. You know, he's done everything asked of him, but they also haven't asked him to carry the load because you haven't really needed to. You've got 2 running backs that have been pretty efficient through the first 2 games and doing really well after contact as well.
Yeah, and so they should do that, but it's not always easier said than done. That you just, you know, you play Texas State, even though that game ended up being a little bit dicey. You run for a lot of yards. You should do that against Texas Southern. How do we know? Will we even know if they run for a couple hundred yards against Kansas? It's a Big 12 team. Who knows? When will we know, or do we know if that's really going to be something they can do, even if the numbers aren't quite the same?
Well, I think it's going to be as the season plays out. The first real tough test you're going to have is the really outstanding Iowa State defense. But then again, their tactics are a little different than some of the other teams in the conference. Therefore, you know, just if you have a bad game against them, I don't think you throw the baby out with the bathwater. But also, if you have a good game against Kansas, you've got a whole lot of optimism. But you also recognize that Kansas is not going to be the caliber of defense that the rest of the conference is.
Baylor and Kansas and Lawrence coming up, of course, tomorrow. Baylor coming off the 2 straight wins that you expected, although the first one was a little bit closer than you thought. Gary Bohannon is off to a very nice start. Obviously, the first game, there were some hits and misses. They kind of held back a little bit. How much, Gary, Sam, just the ability for him to air it out, to throw to Tyquan Thornton and a couple of others, just to have that they can do it. How important is that of what they want to accomplish?
Well, not just the deep throw, but also being able to hit the intermediate and wide throws to the far side of the field can stretch them laterally in a way that you really weren't able to do last year. Brewer was a very good quarterback for you, but once he got banged up, he wasn't able to drive his throws to the same degree that he had before. And that limited you a little bit scheme-wise. Some of the criticism was overblown, but at the same time, having a guy that can really sling it the same way you had with Petty or Russell or Griffin, where they don't need too long to set up and they can really let it fire out to the wide side of the field. That forces the defense to spread out. And if you compare that with a really solid run game, particularly a wide zone run game where the defense has to flow in one direction, you can have some wide open windows to throw to. And I think Bohannon is going to see a lot of that this year, and it's going to be a benefit to him.
Do you think they have their 5 of the offensive line finally? I mean, I know that they've moved guys around position by position and done some things like that, but it does seem that they might have settled on who the best group is.
I think they probably found the 5 that if everybody's healthy, they'll go with, but life on an offensive line is everybody's dealing with something. So I expect there'll be a couple changes here and there just as guys get dinged up. But for the most part, I think they found their 5. And to be able to say that right now after the issues you've had the last couple of years on the offensive line, or really going back to 2017 when you had like 3 or 4 actual linemen and a couple converted tight ends and a couple freshmen, it's nice to finally be in a situation where you actually trust your offensive line to deliver for you.
Sam, I got to ask you, you're about to be shut down because of the child. And so my question is, have you already started studying film on Oregon and Auburn and Utah and future non-conference opponents just for the hell of it?
No, because with my luck, I'd put in all those hours and then they'd hire somebody else.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
No, definitely looked at all the teams we're going to play this year. Big 12 looks pretty solid in terms of competition. But, it's just going to be interesting to see. And BYU is going to be a really interesting game for Baylor because you're going to have 2 teams that have seen the wide zone a ton. And athletically, you've got some pretty interesting matchups on both sides of the ball. That's one that's going to be really interesting to watch.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? The year that they have them on their schedules, the year that there's expansion, and BYU is one of the ones that said, okay, hey, yes, we'll do this. And, yeah, we want you to. That's just crazy. And so, all right.
Before you go, I did meet 2 of your friends last night, David and Elise. They came to trivia at Brotherwell. They don't know anything or know their friends know anything about space. So you just you can give Rasmus about that.
Oh, I will certainly do that. Yeah, great people. Glad you guys had a good time.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate you as always. S11. breaks it down, the analyst work of upcoming opponents, what they've done, what they do, and what Baylor might be able to do, and vice versa.